Most men don't realize it, but they will receive their first flower at their funeral. Hello everyone. Today I will talk about why it's hard to be a man in the 21st century. My name is Lucas Cortez, and this is episode 2 of Why It's Hard to Be a Man. Now, I know this is a very controversial topic in this day and age, so that's why I felt inclined to talk about it. I feel like the more controversial a topic is, the less people will talk about it because they fear what people will think about them if they speak their mind. But not me. I'm not afraid of what people will think or say about what I will talk about in this episode, so that's why I'll dive into what people are too afraid to say. Also, a little disclaimer, all opinions said here are my own, so don't take offense to them if you disagree with them. I'll try my best to represent as many facts as I can, but opinions will be stated now and then. Now, with that out of the way, let's get started. In the last episode, I briefly mentioned that most people in jails were men. Now, while this is true, let's find out if they actually get fixed by the jail system. Now, to answer this question, let's just go over why jails were introduced and what their purpose was. The first actual prison is the Massachusetts State Prison that opened in 1785, just after the American Revolution. Then came Connecticut in 1790 and Pennsylvania in 1794. Those are the first three state prisons in the world. Jails were used for two purposes. One, to keep a person confined until they are given a trial or in a courthouse, and two, to keep a person confined as punishment and so they are rehabilitated so they have a smooth transition into society once again. But were inmates really rehabilitated? Based on their interviews with hundreds of prisoners, researchers at the Institute of Criminology at the University of Cambridge went further, stating that long-term imprisonment, quote-unquote, changes people to the core. Or, in the stark words of a long-term inmate interviewed for research published in the 1980s, after years in prison, quote, you ain't the same, end quote. The way these were said implies that they were changed the complete opposite of the idea to rehabilitate. Instead, they were given fear on a silver platter to not commit another crime. That was not the idea of jails. Jails were supposed to heal, not scare people. And even the whole environment of a jail is overkill. Day after day, year after year, imagine having no space to call your own, no choice over who to be with, what to eat, or where to go. There is threat and suspicion everywhere. Love or even a gentle human touch can be difficult to find. You are separated from family and friends. It's mind-boggling that inmates have to deal with this. Now, let's take a look at how the Netherlands handles their jails because I feel like that their system is what a proper jail system should be to rehabilitate inmates. When a reporter from BBC did an in-depth walkthrough in a Netherlands jail, this is what they said. Quote, at the Zwolle prison, about 124 men and 36 women live here, separate from the general prison population. A third of the women are in the crisis ward, the place where their condition is stabilized before they enter the general psychiatric ward. End quote. Globally, this is rare. In countries like the UK and US, prisoners with mental health conditions often end up in the general prison population. But in the Netherlands, prisoners are streamlined into specific segments following a charge. Quote, the idea is that this way they can receive the proper and particular care they need, end quote. And it doesn't stop there either. They go on to say, quote, one of the unique things about the Dutch criminal justice system is that a person can be judged to be responsible for their crime on 5 levels. Dutch law differs from English law in it recognizes a sliding scale from full responsibility through to total lack of responsibility, with 3 levels in between, end quote, explains one report in the journal Criminal Behavior and Mental Health. While the diminished responsibility clause in the UK and US is similar, there is no such sliding scale. Consider a situation where an individual takes drugs that contribute to psychotic episode. If they go on to commit a violent crime, they can be held responsible on some level, as they made the decision to take the drugs, but if the psychotic episode wasn't drug-induced, they might be seen as less responsible for their crime. This means that mental illness among criminals is tackled quite differently compared with many other countries. If found to have a mental health issue, a convict can be sent to one of several different places. Quote, they filter them at the beginning before they even are inside. End quote, says Maud Vergerbruggen. Sorry if I butchered that in any way. A psychologist at Zwolle Prison. When a person first enters prison, they're again quickly seen by a psychologist or psychiatrist. At Zwolle, I met staff who work with these prisoners, psychologist Vergerbruggen and psychiatrist Menno van Kongsveld. Those who have the most severe cases or those who refuse treatment can be sent to what's called a PPC, short for Penitentiary Psychiatric Center. PPCs are separate from the general prison population, as is the case here in Zwolle. In less severe cases, they go to a place called the EZG, short for Extra Care Facility, which is set up to offer a quiet and stimulating environment, according to the Dutch Ministry of Justice. There are also several places in general mental health hospitals for those who agree to voluntary treatment. There are many benefits to this early streamlining, the team tells me. If you place people, especially those who self-harm, on a regular floor, it would be a disaster, Vergerbruggen says. They need more structure and need to be better protected, and they are also less predictable, she explains. Those were the key points from the article, but it just goes to show that the Dutch handle jails much differently. Their aim is to heal, but in the US or even in Canada, there is a fear of going to jail. Even parents say, don't do something stupid that will make you end up in jail. In the Netherlands, people don't want to end up in jail, but it's not the most terrible thing ever. Decades of research have shown that prison is the least effective place to rehabilitate offenders. Studies have indicated that a stint in prison increases the likelihood that inmates will actually reoffend. Even teens are subject to this. Young people are particularly ill-suited to prison. Detention renders them more likely to graduate from low-level juvenile offenders to lifetime criminals via a stint in corrections. Moreover, despite being seen as the ultimate stick to ensure social order, prison is not a deterrent for most forms of offending. Crime is largely impulsive or driven by complex external factors on decision-making. The notion that offenders are rational agents, weighing up the costs and benefits of offending, has been largely debunked. This just shows that jails in Canada don't work. In 2020, 5 murders occurred in Canadian prisons, making the homicide rate in prisons 20 times higher than in Toronto. In a year, force was deployed more than 2,000 times, while 60% of prison staff were subject to physical violence. Canadian prisons are filled with gangs, many of which perpetrate violence and are involved in the prison drug trade. As reported by the correctional investigator, there is no strategy that specifically and intentionally aims to prevent sexual violence in Canadian federal penitentiaries. A 2019 study by Statistics Canada examined recontact with the Ontario criminal justice system. The study used a population of 53,003 individuals who came into contact at least once with the police because they were arrested of a crime in 2008/2009. 46 had at least one recontact with the police, proportionally higher among men, 48%, than women, 39%. Of those that came into contact with the police, 10% were chronic offenders. So, what can we do to fix this issue of men not getting rehabilitated by the jail system? Well, we either go the Dutch route and change the jail system entirely, or scrap the jail system altogether and find a new system that actually rehabilitates offenders. And that is all for this episode. I thank you very much for listening, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Please consider liking and subscribing if you enjoyed this episode. Goodbye.